first question is that, so how long have you been under influence?
That is, in my mind, an irrelevant question. And the reason why I say this is because when we look at the political system, it's always been by career politicians. And we've seen that they haven't really been able to bring about the kind of change that we need, right? So, to be in politics, I think it's more important for you to have that passion for the right things. And I think you should strongly believe that you can affect that change. I think those are what is required to be successful in this, right?
Okay. So, my next question is that, why should I vote you?
See, again, you should vote me because I'm not a politician, right? So, I think of me as an administrator. Right? So, as an administrator, my main job is to understand the issues that are plaguing the people of our constituency and our country and build proper solutions that address that. Right? See, if I were a politician, I would often be limited by my party's affiliations, by the manifesto, etc. And I would not be able to freely represent exactly what needs to be done. Which is essentially also why I'm standing as an independent candidate and not coming to a party, because I want to have the freedom to create those kind of policies that will actually reflect what is going on and what needs to be done.
And what are your main ideologies?
So, see, any candidate today will tell you that their main ideologies will be environmental sustainability, it will be economic development, and be building out the infrastructure, whether it's in terms of actual infrastructure or healthcare or even education, right? But in addition to these, what I really want to look at is our senior citizens. Why are we not creating policies actively helping our senior citizens? Now, I do understand that India is predominantly a younger country, but eventually, 20 years from now, we're all going to be moving up to become the older segment of our population. So, we should be looking at legislation now to address that issue when it comes up a couple of years from now, right? And one thing that I realized when I've been interacting with people over this time now is that their number one grievance is that once the person is elected to office, they never hear from them. There is no interaction. And they only come back next time at election time, right? So that is something that I want to change. So one of the things on my manifesto or my list of promises is that there has to be transparent governance, okay? And more importantly, there has to be citizen partnership with that. So it's not just about being transparent, but we need to involve the citizens in the day-to-day activities as well, right? So that is something that that is number one on my manifesto. Actually, can you share that manifesto with them? One of the copies you can pay for as well. And second, most important thing is I want to make sure that we're proactively addressing issues. Now, see, for example, our water crisis, they don't have an open end. Right? They've been building up to it. So, why did we not address it before the crisis happened? Why are we always firefighting and not creating silence? So that is something that I intend to do if I'm an MP. I want us to take stock of what are the probable issues that we're going to have in the future and create legislations for it now so that we're able to either avoid those type of dire situations or we're able to navigate successfully. So that is what I want to bring to the table. It's not just about policies that need to be done. Of course, everyone is going to tell you that they need to do that. But you also have to look at it from the point of view of making sure that the citizens are involved more actively, not just around election time, and also that we're building proactive solutions.
Nice. So you already partially answered my next question.
I'm being proactive.
Yeah. So, like my next question is, there are 2-3 parties where they're famous,
right,
and people mostly look at those parties and they just vote it.
Right.
Otherwise, they just go for Tota, right?
Right.
And how confident are you among them?
See, so you correctly touched upon what is wrong with our political system. Because everybody just goes these the past opinions. What are the individuals that are representing those parties? What have they done in their personal capacity to actually showcase that they are passionate about the actual progress of the country? Nobody is looking at that. They're just saying, I'm voting for this party because XYZ. I'm sure everybody already knows why, right? So we need to move away from that kind of thinking and focus more on in an individual capacity, no matter how small it is. What have they done to show that they're interested in actual progress? That is something that as voters, that is something that we need to think about. Okay? So voters' awareness should be at an all-time high when it comes to looking at the candidates who are representing these ideals. Right? They need to walk the talk. It can't be just about giving empty promises. So that is what they need to be aware of.
I have another personal question. So you have around 5 years of financial experience.
Not first time, a lot.
Yeah, okay. So, are you planning anything around that? You know how our country is. So, we are probably poor and poor people are poorer, and rich are always rich.
Right.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
It's very good that you brought that up because that is also part of my manifesto. So if you look at it, you touched upon a very important point. So now all our major parties are actually one major party is talking about how we have now become the fifth largest economy in the world. And that's a really good thing, okay? But what does it really mean? It's from a financial standpoint, we actually look at it. We should be looking at GDP per capita, okay, which is per person in the population. Now, if you look at that, we are at an abysmal level. We are lower than countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh. Now, how can we have that on one end and also be the fifth largest economy in the world, right? So then clearly something is wrong, right? So basically what has happened is that all the wealth that is being generated for the country is just being accumulated in the hands of like big conglomerates. It is not trickling down to citizens, which is why we need people who are committed to making sure that there is equitable economic growth, not just economic growth. Right? So we have to create policies that focus on making sure that not just the country progresses, but citizens also progress equally along with the country. So that is the kind of legislation that I'm looking at.
Yes. So my final question. So what is your message to the people?
So my message to the people is that elections are never between two parties. You should never think about it as between two parties. You should look at the ideals they stand for, see which aligns with your ideals. For example, the only way to predict the future is for you to create it. And how do you create it? By exercising your right to vote. Right? You should analyze properly. Does their ideals match yours? Does their ideals push the country forward in a positive way? Right? And based on that, you're able to make the right choice. Nota is not always an option. You need to, if you're not happy with the major political candidates right now, look at the other options because chances are you will find somebody who's willing to represent your ideas, whose ideas match yours. So you must not just focus on the big parties, focus on the other people who are contesting as well because the other people will be far more passionate than your political candidates. So that is my advice.
Well, since you are talking about Nota, so people just see the first two parties or they go for the Nota and they don't look at in between.
That's
so. I mean, do you have any idea, like, how it can be improved by the probably election commission or government should take an initiative to do something about that?
Yes. So I think that, say, for example, when the nomination list is announced this year, for some specific reason, there was nothing in the newspaper that listed all the candidates together, if you notice, right? So that should not be allowed, right? So from the election commission itself, there must be a publication saying that these are your candidates, and this is what each candidate's vision is. So because if it comes from the election commission, then you know that it's a fair and probably a trustable source when people look at it. So there must be that effort. And second, the media should really not run behind controversial stories. You should be focusing on getting the actual messages out there. So the responsibility is not just in hands of the election commission. It's also on media, as with our journalists, right? Because you are the voices that the people will eventually listen to. Right? So it's really the responsibility of our publications, of our media, to make sure that information is reached out to people. Now, social media has become very powerful, right? So anything that's put out there, either responsible messaging or irresponsible messaging, just seems to go viral. So we need to have responsible people making sure that the guidance is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So all the very best.